Today's Sunshine Note is titled, My Hope is in You. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to His purpose. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. It's easy to surf along during the good times and think that if you did a faceplant or met up with a shark who wanted a piece of you, that you would trust God and rely on Him every bit as much during the dark times as you are right at that beautiful, wonderful, happy moment. It is another thing entirely to actually be spitting out salt water or trying to stop the bleeding from the stump of your arm or leg while you thrash around trying to get back to shore and still be able to trust that God has a plan and that everything will work together in the end for His glory and for good. Not only for your good, but for the good of others too. That is exactly the situation in which Christian contemporary singer Aaron Chust and his wife Sarah found themselves when their second son Nicky was diagnosed with a rare disease called eosinophilic esophagitis, EE. Nicky could not eat or swallow food because his esophagus wasn't severely inflamed. He had the worst case doctors had ever seen, and there was no known cure. But Aaron and Sarah had talked about the fact that if God chose to bless them with children, they were only caregivers of those children. The children belonged to God, and however long God chose to let them live was His perfect plan. So they clung to God and His plan even during the darkness of their son's suffering. That's when an amazing thing happened. Nicky was taken for further testing, and doctors could not find any trace of the disease. A writer reporting on the story referred to their ordeal as a tragedy, but Aaron commented on the story himself saying, I have never called what God took us through a tragedy. A tragedy implies, by definition, an unhappy ending, and while our boy still deals with effects of EE, he is alive and happy and strong, and at age 2, he can quote John 1:1 and Matthew 5:16 verbatim. I am a proud papa, more in love with my son and my Savior than I was a year ago. What we must remember when we are fighting against the darkness and pain of hard times is that all suffering is temporary. God's own Son suffered and died, but He rose again. His suffering was temporary, and ours will be too. One day we will be in heaven, and there will be no more suffering or sadness at all, ever. May God bless you today.